My name is Summer, I'm 37 years old, and right now I'm fighting for the very apartment I sacrificed nearly a decade to build. You'd think the enemy would be a stranger, but no. It's my own family. Last month, at what was supposed to be a normal family dinner, my younger sister Kate leaned across the table, smiled sweetly, and announced, "Since we've just had another baby and the school is right near your place, we'll be moving into your apartment. It's only fair." Everyone nodded. My parents, Kate's husband Nicholas, they all acted like the decision was already made. As if my years of saving, my nights spent repairing every corner of that two-story apartment in Chicago meant nothing. As if my home was theirs to claim. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had family pressure you like this, share your story. I want to know I'm not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, you'll want to hear how this one ends. So how did it come to this? It started 7 years ago, when my parents sold a small plot of land they owned outside the city. It wasn't huge, but it sold for about $100,000, a fortune in our family. And then came the split. I was 30. Kate was 26 and about to get married. My parents gave me 20%, $20,000. The other 80% went straight to Kate, because she's starting a family, she needs it more. It stung, but I stayed quiet. I took my small share and turned it into a down payment on the apartment I'd been dreaming about for years. I poured every ounce of energy into saving, renovating, and building that space into my sanctuary. And now, that same sacrifice is the very reason they claim the apartment belongs to all of them. Because part of my down payment came from the land sale, they call it family money. They don't care that it was my share, that I worked 7 more years to make it real, that I live alone and built this home with my own 2 hands. To them, it's simple: Kate has kids. Summer doesn't. So Kate deserves my home. But let me tell you, this story is just getting started. Because when I said no, they decided to take things even further. When I look back at our childhood, it's almost unbelievable how different the paths were for my sister Kate and me, even though we grew up under the same roof. I was the firstborn, the trial run. From the time I was little, I was quiet, studious, the type of child who'd rather spend an afternoon with a book than running around the neighborhood. My parents praised me for my grades, sure, but it never lit up their faces the way Kate's presence did. Kate arrived 4 years after me, and from the very beginning, it was like the sun rose and set with her. She was bubbly, charming, with a smile that could win over strangers in the grocery store. People used to say, "She's such a little angel." My parents drank it in. It wasn't that they disliked me. But with Kate, there was this glow, like she could do no wrong. I was the responsible one, the one they expected to do well. Kate was the star, the one they bragged about at family gatherings. By the time we were teenagers, the roles were carved in stone. I got straight A's, worked part-time whenever I could, and dreamed about independence. My parents would nod and say, "That's good, Summer. Keep it up." Kate? She made the cheerleading squad, got asked to prom, won the best smile superlative. My parents framed every certificate, every photo, every trophy, even the small ones. At family dinners, relatives would ask about Kate's plans, Kate's friends, Kate's talents. I was the one clearing the table, quietly listening while my sister took the spotlight. And then came adulthood. At 18, I went to college in Chicago. I worked part-time jobs, lived in cramped apartments, paid my own way as much as I could. My parents helped here and there, but the message was clear: you're independent, you can handle it. Kate, meanwhile, stayed closer to home. She wasn't the academic type, but when she talked about marriage, about wanting a family, my parents lit up. Suddenly every resource flowed toward her. A new car for commuting. Extra money for her wedding fund. My mom even started buying furniture for the house Kate would one day have. I remember calling home once, exhausted after pulling a double shift while studying for finals. I just needed a little sympathy. My dad's response? Well, you chose that path. You're strong. You'll figure it out. The next week, Kate posted photos of the bridal shower my parents threw for her: new dresses, decorations, a catered meal. I wasn't even asked to contribute. It became painfully obvious, in our parents' eyes, Kate was the one building a life worth investing in. I was the career woman, the one who would always land on her feet, so why bother helping me? But the truth is, that constant imbalance shaped me. I stopped expecting support and built my own resilience instead. Every promotion at work, every raise, every saved dollar was mine alone. I wasn't anyone's priority, so I learned to make myself one. Kate leaned on family for everything. I leaned on myself. And that difference? It grew wider with every passing year. By the time I turned 30, I had a clear vision. I wasn't going to wait for anyone to hand me security. I'd create it myself. I wanted to own something tangible, something no one could take away from me. That's when I started saving for my apartment. Meanwhile, Kate was 26 and planning her wedding. My parents were pouring money, time, and energy into her new life. When they sold that plot of land, I wasn't surprised most of the money went to her. They said it outright: she's starting a family, she needs it more. It hurt, but it wasn't new. For me, it was just another reminder of where I stood in the hierarchy. I got the leftovers. Kate got the feast. But here's the thing, those leftovers became the seed of my independence. I took my smaller share and built it into the down payment for my dream home. I thought that once I closed the deal, once I held those keys in my hand, no one could ever touch it. I was wrong. Because now, years later, the very family who always put me last, wants to take the only thing I ever built for myself. And they're willing to use that land money, my so-called inheritance, as a weapon against me. When I turned 30, my life looked nothing like Kate's. And maybe that was the point. I was living in a cramped one-bedroom on the north side of Chicago, working late nights at the office and picking up freelance projects on weekends just to build my savings. Every dollar I didn't need for rent or food went straight into my apartment fund. No brunches, no vacations, no impulse shopping sprees. I was obsessed, maybe even ruthless, about one thing: owning a home I could finally call mine. While my friends were posting pictures from Europe or the Caribbean, I was hunched over spreadsheets, calculating how long it would take to reach my down payment goal if I cut my grocery budget another $50 a month. I traded nights out for nights in with second-hand cookbooks, learning how to stretch ingredients into a week's worth of meals. Sacrifice became my second language. And yet, every time I went to visit my parents, the spotlight wasn't on my determination. It was on Kate. At 26, she was planning her wedding. My parents were thrilled, writing checks for caterers and photographers, buying her furniture for her future home. I watched from the sidelines, smiling in photos but quietly wondering what it would feel like to have that kind of support directed at me. The night of her rehearsal dinner, I came straight from work, still in my office clothes. My parents barely noticed. Their eyes were on Kate in her white dress, glowing with excitement. Dad made a toast about our perfect daughter who's starting her real life. His words stung more than I wanted to admit. What was I doing, then? Pretend life? When Kate married Nicholas, the family narrative shifted even more sharply. She wasn't just the golden child anymore, she was the golden wife. And soon after, the golden mother. I remember the day she called me, voice trembling with joy: "Summer, I'm pregnant." I congratulated her, of course. I meant it. But when I hung up, a heavy ache settled in my chest. Not because I envied the baby, but because I knew what was coming: another tidal wave of attention and resources flowing to Kate. I was right. The moment her daughter was born, my parents practically moved in with them. Mom took over cooking meals, Dad handled their bills when Nicholas's hours were cut, and every family gathering became a shrine to the baby's milestones. Meanwhile, I was still grinding 7 days a week. I'd show up at dinners with dark circles under my eyes, talking about the extra projects I'd taken on, the raises I'd fought for, the contractors I'd been researching for my future apartment. My parents would smile politely, then turn to coo over Kate's baby. "She's such a natural mother," Mom would gush, bouncing the infant on her lap. "Nicholas and Kate are doing everything right," Dad would add, pouring them another glass of wine. And me? I was the responsible career woman, the one who didn't need help, the one who would figure it out. They didn't see the nights I cried from exhaustion. The mornings I forced myself out of bed after 3 hours of sleep. The endless weekends spent crunching numbers instead of relaxing. What they saw was a daughter who had chosen independence, and therefore, in their eyes, forfeited the right to be supported. What they didn't realize was that all those sacrifices were paying off. Slowly but surely, my savings account grew. Each time I transferred another chunk into that fund, it felt like one brick in the foundation of the life I was building. By the time Kate's daughter turned 1, I had reached a milestone of my own. $60,000 saved, enough for the down payment I had dreamed of since my landlord hiked my rent for the 3rd time. The day I signed the mortgage papers, my hands trembled as I held the pen. When the keys landed in my palm, I cried in the parking lot like a child. My 2-story apartment wasn't just a home. It was proof. Proof that I could rely on myself. Proof that even without the spotlight, I could achieve something monumental. But as I stood in those empty rooms, imagining the life I would build inside, I had no idea what storm was waiting for me down the road. Because while I saw the apartment as the reward for years of sacrifice, my family would eventually see it as a prize they were entitled to claim. For a long time, I thought my life would only ever be about work and independence. And then I met Jim. We crossed paths at a professional networking event downtown. He wasn't flashy or trying too hard, just smart, funny in a quiet way, and genuinely curious about what I did. We ended up talking for 2 hours straight, ignoring the catered appetizers and the keynote speech happening on stage. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Jim was steady, kind, and ambitious in his own right. He worked in logistics, a field I knew nothing about, but his passion for solving complex problems mirrored my own. Dates turned into weekends together. Weekends turned into months. Eventually, I gave him a key to my apartment, the same apartment I had fought tooth and nail to buy. With Jim, my world felt bigger, softer. He made late-night takeout on the floor feel like fine dining. He held me when the stress of work and finances threatened to crack me open. He reminded me that independence didn't have to mean isolation. But my parents never saw him that way. The first time I introduced Jim at a family dinner, Mom plastered on a polite smile and immediately asked about Kate's pregnancy cravings instead. Dad shook Jim's hand but didn't ask a single question about him. And when Jim left early that evening because of an early meeting the next morning, my parents pulled me aside. "Summer," Mom whispered, "he doesn't seem serious." Dad nodded. "He's not really husband material. Don't get your hopes up." It stung. Jim was more responsible, more reliable, more loving than Nicholas ever had been, but Nicholas got instant acceptance because he was Kate's choice. My choice was always up for debate. Over the years, their dismissal hardened into something worse, erasure. Jim wasn't invited to birthdays. His name was never mentioned in family group chats. When Kate's first daughter was christened, Jim wasn't even told about the ceremony. The message was clear: in their eyes, Jim wasn't real. And by extension, my relationship wasn't real either. At first, I pushed back. I insisted on bringing him along to gatherings, and each time, the tension thickened until Jim quietly told me he didn't want to make things harder. "It's fine," he'd say with that calm smile. "I don't need their approval. I just need you." And he meant it. But over time, the constant exclusion wore me down too. Family dinners became something I dreaded, not because of the food or the company, but because of the gaping empty space beside me where Jim should have been. Eventually, I stopped going altogether. It was easier than feeling like an outsider at my own parents' table. And then came the weekend everything changed. Jim had been sent on an extended work trip, 3 weeks overseas. It was the longest we'd been apart in years. While he was gone, my mom called with her usual cheer. "Family dinner this Sunday, honey. Everyone will be there. Don't skip this one." I almost said no. But part of me felt guilty, like maybe I had been too distant. Maybe showing up alone, just this once, would help ease the tension. So I agreed. I walked into that house without Jim by my side, and for the first time in years, I sat at that long dining table completely alone. I didn't know it yet, but that night would become the most pivotal dinner of my life, the night my parents and sister revealed their plan to take the very home I had built for myself. By the time I finished the final touches on my apartment, the fresh coat of paint in the upstairs hallway, the custom bookshelves in the living room, I thought I could finally exhale. After years of sacrifice, of skipped vacations, of grinding work and sore hands, my 2-story apartment in Chicago was complete. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I truly had a home. And then Kate had her second baby. The phone calls from my parents came almost daily those first weeks. "She's exhausted, poor thing. Nicholas is struggling with the night shifts. The girls really need more space now." Each time, I congratulated her sincerely. I loved my nieces. But underneath the joy, I felt a ripple of unease I couldn't explain. When Mom called the following Sunday and insisted I come to dinner, "Everyone will be there, don't skip this one," the unease settled into my stomach like a stone. Jim was away on a 3-week work assignment overseas, and though I hated the thought of sitting through another family gathering without him, some guilty part of me thought maybe I should show up. Maybe it would smooth things over. I should have trusted my instincts. The moment I stepped through the door, I smelled Mom's roast chicken. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like a trap. Mom hugged me tightly, whispering, "So glad you came, sweetheart." Dad didn't even rise from his chair in the living room, just lifted his beer with a grunt of greeting. Kate and Nicholas arrived late, as always. Kate swept in with the baby cradled dramatically in her arms, glowing with that new mother halo that always made everyone treat her like royalty. Their 5-year-old darted into the playroom, already spoiled with a pile of toys my parents kept just for her. Nicholas collapsed beside Dad as if the short drive had drained him. Dinner itself began pleasantly enough. Mom fussed over the food, Dad talked about his golf game, Nicholas about his endless overtime. Kate cooed over the baby while everyone else listened in rapt attention. I sat quietly, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped with dessert. Kate cleared her throat, that rehearsed sweetness curling around her words. "So, Summer," she began, "now that you've finished your renovations, the timing is perfect. Nicholas and I decided we'll move into your apartment next month. With the new baby here and school so close, it's only fair." For a moment, I couldn't move. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. Surely I had misheard. But when I looked around the table, I saw the truth. Mom was nodding, eyes shining with encouragement. Dad leaned back, satisfied, like this was already decided. Nicholas gave me a smug half-smile. I set my fork down carefully. "Excuse me?" Kate tilted her head, patient, patronizing. "You don't really need that much space alone. 2 floors for one person? It's excessive. But for us, with 2 children, it's perfect. You could find something smaller. Maybe a nice studio closer to your office." Her words sliced through me. "That's my home," I said slowly. "I worked for it. I paid for it. I renovated every inch." Dad's voice cracked across the table. "Don't be selfish, Summer. You're one person. Your sister has a family. That apartment should finally be put to proper use." "Proper use?" My voice shook. "Its proper use as being my home." Mom reached across the table, laying her hand over mine. Her tone was soft, her words sharp. "Sweetheart, don't forget, you wouldn't even have that place without the land money. That was family money. It belongs to all of us." My chest burned. That was my share. 20%. Kate got 80. You can't twist that into ownership of my apartment. Nicholas leaned in, his voice smooth, his eyes cold. Look, no one's saying you have to give it up completely. Think of it as sharing. We'll handle expenses eventually. And of course, we'd make improvements. Knock out a wall upstairs for a playroom, redo the kitchen with stainless steel. It'll be perfect for the kids. I stared at him. You're talking about tearing down walls in my apartment, at my expense? Kate's smile didn't falter. Not just yours. We'd split it. 50-50. That's fair. I laughed then. A bitter, hollow sound. You want me to pay to renovate my own home so you can live there for free? Summer. Dad barked, slamming his hand on the table. Enough. Family sacrifices. We gave you that money, remember? It's time you help your sister. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but my voice came out steady. No. I am not giving you my home. Not the upstairs. Not the downstairs. Not any of it. This is mine. You don't get to decide that for me. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Mom's eyes filled with tears. How can you be so cold? After everything we've done for you. Kate leaned back, muttering just loud enough, see? I told you she'd be difficult. Always selfish. The chair screeched as I stood. My purse was already in my hand. You are not moving into my apartment, I said, each word sharp as glass. And if you try, you'll regret it. Behind me, the noise swelled, Mom's sobs, Dad's fury, Kate's hissed insults. But I kept walking, out the door, into the night air that felt both freezing and liberating. I slid into my car, heart pounding, hands shaking. My phone buzzed. A message from Kate. 2 full pages. Paint colors. Furniture choices. Appliances. Even notes about tearing out the shelves I had built myself. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning into rage. If I thought this ended at the dinner table, I was wrong. This was only the beginning. The days after that dinner felt like a war I hadn't agreed to fight. It started with phone calls. My mother's voice, sharp beneath the sugar, Summer, you need to think about what's best for the children. My father's text messages, blunt commands, be reasonable. Give Kate the apartment. Then came the aunts, the cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly filling my inbox with variations of the same line, family helps family. Kate played her part with performative grace. She posted vague updates on Facebook, disappointed when people put possessions above family, especially when children are involved. The comments flooded in with sympathy for her, strangers ready to crown her a martyr. Meanwhile, I came home one evening to find a note slipped under my door in neat handwriting. A bigger family deserves a bigger space. Don't be selfish. No signature, but I knew exactly whose hand had guided it. It didn't stop there. Someone scratched the side of my car with a key. A bouquet of dead flowers appeared on my welcome mat. Every petty little cruelty whispered the same message, this isn't over. And beneath all the noise, one fact burned brightest of all. The $80,000 Kate received from that land sale, the lion's share of our so-called inheritance, was gone. Not invested. Not saved. Gone. She and Nicholas had burned through it on a lavish wedding, a honeymoon in Mexico, a new SUV they traded in 2 years later, endless shopping trips, and years of rent. No foundation. No property. No legacy. Now they were in a cramped rental apartment, their money long vanished, their debts rising. And instead of accepting responsibility, they pointed to the only tangible thing in the family, my apartment, and declared it theirs. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, fury gnawing at me. I had turned my 20,000 into a home. They had turned their 80 into dust. And now they wanted to steal the one thing I had built, as if my sacrifices meant nothing. I tried ignoring them. I muted calls. I stopped checking Facebook. I avoided family gatherings. But the pressure kept building until even walking into my own building lobby felt like stepping onto a battlefield. It was Jim who finally broke through the storm. One night, I came home to find him waiting at my kitchen table, back from his business trip, his hands folded, his face serious. I poured everything out, the dinner, the threats, the notes, the endless guilt-tripping. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling, my throat raw. Jim reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "Summer," he said softly, "they're not going to stop. Not until we take away the excuse." I frowned. "What excuse?" "The 20,000. That's the lever they keep pulling. Family money. Inheritance. They'll keep twisting it unless we cut it loose." My heart lurched. "Jim, no. That was my share. I built everything else myself. I don't owe them anything." "You don't," he agreed. "But if giving it back makes them lose their grip on you, then maybe it's worth it. I have the savings. Let me pay it back. We'll hand them 20,000 and close the door for good." I stared at him, stunned. He would do that, for me? Part of me bristled. Why should we reward their entitlement? Why should we hand over money when Kate had already wasted 4 times that amount? But another part of me felt an unexpected wave of relief. Because he was right, on their own, they'd never stop. They'd keep circling, pecking, poisoning, until I broke. I squeezed his hand, tears stinging my eyes. "Jim, they won't buy a home with 20,000. You know that." "I know," he said with a faint smile. "But without that argument, they'll be left with nothing. And maybe that's what they deserve, nothing." I looked around at the apartment we had built together, the shelves, the walls, the life carved out of years of sacrifice. No one could put a price tag on what it meant to me. But if 20,000 was the cost of peace, maybe it was worth paying. Still, in the pit of my stomach, I knew this wasn't just about money. This was about control. And Kate had never once walked away empty-handed. A week later, Jim and I invited my parents and Kate over. I wanted everything to be calm, controlled. No ambush, no dessert table declarations. Just facts. Jim sat beside me, a quiet pillar of strength, while I laid out the folder on the table. Inside was a check for $20,000. This, I said evenly, was my share from the land sale. You've all been calling it family money, using it to claim my apartment. So here it is, 20,000. Returned. Paid in full. That argument is over. For a moment, silence. Mom blinked, her mouth opening and closing. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the check as if it were counterfeit. Kate glanced at Nicholas, a smirk tugging at her lips. Finally, Mom exhaled, her voice tremulous. "Oh, Summer, it's a nice gesture, but you don't understand. It's not about the money anymore." My stomach dropped. Dad tapped the table with one thick finger. "That 20,000 became part of the apartment. You used it for the down payment. You can't just hand us cash and erase that. We have equity in your home. That's how it works." Equity. The word burned. "No," I said sharply. "That's not how it works. I took my share and invested it. Kate took hers and spent it. Those were choices. I don't owe you my home because I made better choices." Kate leaned back in her chair, arms folded, eyes gleaming. "Come on, Summer. You think 20,000 is worth a whole apartment in Chicago? Please. That money doubled in value the second you bought the place. Technically, we own a share. 20% at least." I felt Jim stiffen beside me. "You don't own anything," he said, his voice calm but razor sharp. "Your name isn't on the deed. You never paid the mortgage. You never lifted a paintbrush. This apartment exists because of Summer's sacrifice, not because of a check 7 years ago." Dad's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone, young man." "No," I cut in, my pulse hammering. "Don't talk to him like that. He's right. I built that home. Alone. And this check was supposed to prove it. But clearly, you don't want the money. You want control. Mom clasped her hands together, tears gathering. Summer, we're not villains. We just want what's best for the children. You can't expect Kate to raise 2 little girls in a cramped rental while you rattle around in a 2-story apartment all by yourself. Kate pounced on the words, her voice smooth, victorious. Exactly. This isn't about fairness, it's about practicality. Families need homes. Single women don't need so much space. Be reasonable. My chest tightened. There it was, their truth, stripped bare. It had never been about the 20,000. It was about punishing me for choosing a different life. For proving I could build something without their constant approval. I pushed the check across the table. Take it or leave it. But this is the only thing I owe you. My apartment is not on the table. For a moment, no one moved. Then Kate laughed. A small, cruel sound. 20,000 won't buy us a home, Summer. It barely buys a car these days. If you think that check settles anything, you're delusional. Nicholas smirked. Dad scowled. Mom dabbed at her eyes. And I understood, with sick clarity, even if I burned that check in front of them, even if I handed over double, they wouldn't stop. Because money wasn't what they wanted. They wanted me to bend. They wanted my home, my independence, my proof that I could stand without them. And they weren't going to let go. At first, I thought the check would close the argument. Instead, it lit a fuse. The next morning my phone lit up with 20 new messages. Mom, Dad, Kate. All variations of the same demand, we're not interested in cash. It's the apartment that matters. When I didn't answer, the tone shifted. You're being cruel. Your nieces will suffer because of your stubbornness. What kind of sister are you? By the end of the week, the messages weren't just guilt, they were threats. Kate sent one at 2 a.m., if you don't work with us, we'll have no choice but to claim our share legally. 20% is ours whether you like it or not. Nicholas followed it up the next morning, lawyers won't save you. This is family property. Courts will see it that way. I knew he was bluffing, but the words hit me like ice water. What if they actually tried? What if they found some way to drag me into court, to drain me in fees, to force me into a settlement? It didn't stop there. One night I came home to find a flyer taped to my door, families deserve homes. Don't be selfish. I didn't need a signature to know where it came from. The whispers among extended relatives turned into open calls. My cousin left a voicemail, why can't you just share? Everyone thinks you're being unreasonable. Even at work, I caught myself flinching every time my phone buzzed. I stopped sleeping, lying awake until dawn, my chest tight with dread. I started jumping at small sounds, wondering if one night Kate and Nicholas would show up with boxes, daring me to call the police. Jim tried to reassure me. They can't just move in. It's not legal. But the look in Kate's eyes at that dinner, the way my parents had nodded along, it told me they didn't care about legal. They believed this was theirs. And belief can drive people to do dangerous things. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I was pouring myself a glass of wine when my phone buzzed again. A new email from Kate. It was a scanned agreement she had typed herself, titled Family Property Arrangement. In it, she declared that she and Nicholas had a 20% equity claim to my apartment, and that in good faith I should vacate the premises within 60 days so they could assume rightful occupancy. I stared at the screen, my hand shaking so badly I spilled wine down my sleeve. It was absurd. Illegal. A fantasy dressed up as a contract. But it was also a line crossed. They weren't just pushing anymore. They were preparing to take. That night, with my stomach in knots, I told Jim, I need help. Real help. This isn't going to stop. The next morning, I sat in a quiet office across from a real estate attorney named Jennifer. She listened carefully, her face calm but firm, as I handed her my stack of printed messages, the fake contract, the screenshots of threats. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "Summer, you did the right thing coming here. I've seen this before, family disputes can get ugly fast. But let me be clear, they have no legal claim. None. Your name is on the deed, you've paid the mortgage, you own this outright. If they try anything, you're protected. And if they escalate? We'll be ready." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Walking out of that office, documents clutched to my chest, I realized something important. This wasn't just about defending my apartment anymore. It was about defending myself. My life. My choices. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had the power to win. Once Jennifer, the attorney, reassured me that my apartment was legally untouchable, I felt steadier. But my family didn't know I'd taken that step. To them, I was still the same soft target they had always been able to guilt, pressure, and push around. So the pressure continued. Texts, voicemails, social media posts, each one dripping with entitlement. Kate wrote long paragraphs about how I was robbing her daughters of stability. Nicholas threatened to come by and start moving boxes if I didn't cooperate. My parents swung between guilt and fury, Mom crying about family falling apart, Dad barking that I was too materialistic to understand real values. I started saving everything, screenshots, voicemails, even the flyer someone taped to my door again. Jennifer told me to build a record. If they try anything drastic, we'll shut it down fast, she said. And then, life took over. Because while Kate and Nicholas were sharpening their claws, their own world was collapsing. Nicholas never found steady work after losing his warehouse job. The part-time gigs he picked up barely covered groceries. Kate, so used to being bankrolled by my parents, couldn't stomach cutting back. She kept spending, online shopping hauls, toys for the girls, even luxury skincare boxes delivered right to the doorstep. The credit card bills ballooned. The car payments fell behind. Their landlord, fed up with months of late checks, finally served them with an eviction notice. The day it happened, I got a call from my cousin. Her voice carried equal parts shock and schadenfreude. "They're moving back into your parents' house. With all their stuff." Nicholas looked like he was going to break down in the driveway. I pictured it vividly, Kate's face tight with anger as she hauled boxes into the same childhood bedroom she once swore she'd never return to. Nicholas trailing behind, avoiding eye contact. Two little girls clinging to their toys, confused about why they weren't home anymore. My parents tried to cover it up with their usual optimism, "It's only temporary, until they get back on their feet." But the illusion was shattered. The golden child, the perfect family, reduced to a pair of overgrown teenagers moving back in with Mom and Dad. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward. Jim was my anchor through all of it. He cooked for me on nights I came home exhausted. He listened when I raged about my parents' manipulations. He held me when the nightmares came, whispering, "They can't take this from you. They never will." One crisp autumn evening, he invited me to dinner at the rooftop of our favorite restaurant downtown. The skyline stretched around us, golden lights flickering against the dark sky. After dessert, he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. My breath caught before he even opened it. "Summer," he said softly, "you've built this incredible life, against every obstacle. And I want to build the rest of it with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred the city lights as I whispered yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and for the first time in years, I felt wholly, undeniably chosen. Not overlooked, not diminished, chosen. Weeks later, another turning point arrived. I sat alone in the bathroom, staring at two pink lines on a test. My hands shook, my chest heaved, tears poured down my cheeks as I whispered, "It's real. It's really happening." Telling Jim was a memory I'll keep forever. He lifted me off the ground, spinning me in our kitchen, laughing through his own tears. "Our family starts now," he said, pressing his forehead to mine. And that's when it all came full circle. My parents once claimed I didn't need space because I was single, childless, too independent. They thought Kate deserved everything because she was building a family. And yet here I was, in the home I fought for, carrying my first child, engaged to a man who loved me without conditions. Kate? She was still living in our parents' house. Her $80,000 long gone. Her marriage fraying under financial strain. Her daughters crammed into a small bedroom. She had been handed every advantage, every bailout. I was given scraps. But I built something from those scraps. And in the end, that's what mattered. Because revenge doesn't always look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes, revenge is quiet. It's a mortgage paid on time. It's a ring catching the glow of the skyline. It's the flutter of life beneath your hand. It's winning simply by refusing to surrender. And that's what I did.